Hi guys. Before we proceed to this video, we've got something very important to share with you. Neoliberalism, Inequality and Authoritarianism by Professor Jon V. Kofas is available for purchase. You can order it directly from the publisher Little French eBooks or through Amazon.
Hello everyone, welcome. On July 18, every year, the world celebrates Nelson Mandela International Day in the honor of the South African leader of the African National Congress Party, who is associated with ending the tyrannical and exploitative apartheid regime of South Africa and becoming the first Black president and initiating Black majority rule. This year, 2025, has been designated as the year to focus on fighting poverty and inequality globally. This is a major issue for South Africa, especially considering that the legacy of Nelson Mandela, which is a wonderful legacy in terms of the symbolism, in terms of the reality of ending apartheid, symbolism not just for South Africa, but for the entire African continent and for the entire world, for people who are marginalized and exploited through an institutional structure and social contract for the benefit of elites, whether they are white supremacists or the Afrikaners in South Africa or others. However, the reality is that the Nelson Mandela legacy is mixed. If we strip aside the cult of personality, if we strip aside the celebrations by politicians, establishment politicians, both of the conservative ilk as well as of the centrist, so-called liberal, what we see is some of these same people, by the way, some of these same people, in fact, some of the same people who embraced him. For example, Margaret Thatcher. Let's take Margaret Thatcher. She's no longer with us, but Margaret Thatcher had dismissed Nelson Mandela as a terrorist and a communist, and then of course she embraced him and praised him. He worked, of course, with her. He had to cooperate with the world, different world governments. The reason I'm mentioning this is because some of the same people that had dismissed Nelson Mandela in the African National Congress as communist and terrorist during the apartheid regime, and did so in many cases for politically opportunistic reasons or economic opportunistic reasons. They then turn around once he, of course, gained legitimacy in the eyes of the world, head of a government, president of South Africa. And especially after he passed away, he became sort of a cold figure. The legacy, we have to strip all those layers of fluff, if you will, cult of personality layers aside. And we have to examine the record, because the record of this man who in fact sacrificed 27 years of his life in prison because he came under attack by the white supremacist apartheid regime in South Africa, by the Afrikaner regime, for fighting against apartheid, but they accused him of terrorism and associating with communists and terrorists, namely the ANC. Okay, and they put him in prison. Okay, now once he was out, there was a deal that was made, And this is what I discuss in the long video, among many other aspects, from his domestic economic and social policy to international events and foreign policy especially. The deal he made is very simple. Black majority rule, which included, by the way, and still does, there are white Afrikaners in government elected, but the black majority, which is a bit over 80%, would have the right to elect its own representatives. So there was indeed a top-down revolution in South Africa. And it coincided with two things that are very important: the downfall of the Soviet bloc and the ascendancy of the neoliberal political economy under globalization. South Africa was well integrated into the neoliberal world economy, and some of the richest people in South Africa, especially linked to the gold and diamond mines and other mining companies, shipping and so forth, they wanted no change in the economic status quo, in the social status quo. They were fine with not all of them, but especially the richest family in South Africa, which did support, by the way, the ANC's transition into legitimacy, namely the Oppenheimer family. The Oppenheimer family was, in fact, supportive of this. And they, however, they did not want to lose the economic privileged position that they enjoyed. Mandela made that sacrifice. In making this sacrifice of trading political power, black majority rule, for maintaining the social status quo, we see the results in the statistics of South Africa today. Namely, in the domain of living standards, wages, wage disparity and inequality, housing, education, health, among the black majority. Now, it is true that, like the United States, which gradually, and I mean very gradually, after the Civil War, and really not until the Kennedy administration, a black capitalist class begins to emerge. So the white establishment co-opts, although right after the Civil War, that is during the Reconstruction era in the United States, there was an immediate attempt on the part of the whites to co-opt the elected officials. But what we have is a history in the United States of the co-optation of black elites into the social contract. And that is to this day, by the way, to this day, right now, in the United States. What we have in South Africa is the creation of black elites, the political class, and of course, a few capitalists. And then, of course, the Afrikaners, who are a minority in South Africa, continuing to enjoy the benefits of a thriving economy. So in that respect, that is part of the legacy of Nelson Mandela. As much as this man is a symbol, sacrificing his life, 3 decades almost behind bars, accused of some bogus nonsense terrorism, and then of course this former terrorist is embraced as a hero by the same people accusing him of terrorism, by the way, and communism. Let me say something else, by the way, about these terms, terrorism and communism. The Nelson Mandela was a product of the Cold War. He's in the same category as others who were accused of communism and the white supremacists and the Western governments accuse them of being terrorists and communists. They include Kwame Nkrumah, the hero of Ghana, the decolonization hero of Ghana, Patrice Lumumba in the Congo, Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya. So you have a number of African leaders in the same boat. Nelson Mandela comes out of that tradition during the Cold War, which coincided, the early Cold War, with decolonization and the struggle of Africans to regain not just political control, in the case of South Africa, but also gain some economic control, that is, control of the natural resources, control of the economy in the hands of the people. And they did so embracing different models of political models and models of economic development. By the way, they did not all agree on the model. By and large, they stayed with the non-aligned, as did, by the way, the ANC and Kwame Nkrumah, the same thing in Ghana. They stayed with the non-aligned, that is, with India, with Indonesia, with Egypt, with Yugoslavia. Back then, Yugoslavia doesn't exist now. And today, of course, South Africa is a BRICS member. That too is a legacy of South Africa under black majority rule, which, of course, Nelson Mandela started. The legacy is indeed mixed. There are very good things. This man does transcend the label of just a mere politician. He is indeed in a different category. I don't want to say like Mahatma Gandhi, who got his start as a young lawyer in South Africa, in fact, fighting British colonialism, but he is close to that category, the Mahatma Gandhi category. He is one of these personalities who has gone down in history so far as a major liberator of people who were exploited, the black majority, 82% exploited by a white minority. The question is, are they still exploited economically? Absolutely. Because the numbers indicate as much. Whether you look at IMF statistics, private economic studies, that is scholarly studies, it's the same thing. So I invite you to join me in the longer analytical video celebrating the life and legacy of one of the greatest politicians of the late 20th century in the world, a man who transcended labels, a man that was universally loved, a great politician in terms of contributing something positive to humanity instead of using the office to amass personal wealth at the expense of society. Thank you very much. I would appreciate, by the way, any comments you have, any questions, and also if you would please join this channel, become a member. Thank you very much.